Let's check in now with Dr. Robert Hopkins. He's the professor of internal medicine and pediatrics and director of the Division of General Internal Medicine at UAMS, and he's also the chair of Health and Human Services National Vaccine Advisory Committee. Good morning, Dr. Hopkins. How you doing?
Doing well. How are you, Kevin?
Yeah, most people have just a basic business card. You have a resume. I like that. We'll go with that. Dr. Hopkins, we've got a couple of options out here that have popped up in the news involving a future vaccine for COVID-19. Pfizer and Moderna both having those out. What are the options? Explain what's going on, if you'd make sense of that for us.
Sure. Well, we are moving very quickly toward hopefully having a COVID vaccine available at least for our highest risk populations here in the next few weeks or months. Neither of these vaccines has yet been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration for authorization or approval. That is expected to happen anytime soon. They have to reach a certain point in their clinical trials to do that. But I expect that by the end of the calendar year, sometime, probably in December, we'll be starting to vaccinate people to prevent COVID.
All right. What about the speed that this has been put together? I mean, is it coming together too quickly, or do we just have the technology to do this now?
Well, we've seen a combination of three different factors. One is we've got a lot better technology to develop vaccines. We've been able to use some of the lessons we learned from the SARS outbreak and from the MERS outbreak, which were two other coronavirus diseases, and efforts to start building those vaccines. We're able to jumpstart our efforts to start COVID-19 vaccine development. The second thing is a lot of money has gone into investing in building a process where normally it takes us years to get to this point with a new vaccine, where we do step animal testing, then very, very small human trials, then larger human trials, and then now the big phase 3 trials, where those used to be done in sequence, and then you start building vaccine afterwards. Now we're doing a lot of those steps in parallel. And so we've shortened the timeline, but we haven't taken out any of the steps of assessing efficacy and safety.
Talking to Dr. Robert Hopkins, he's an expert on viruses and immunizations, UAMS. And with this, I mean, as quickly as it's come about, some apprehension about taking it, should people be concerned at all? Are there potential side effects down the road?
Well, what I would encourage people to take is the approach that I'm taking. I am cautiously optimistic. I'm not willing right now to take any vaccine that I haven't been able to look at some of the data, the actual data on the vaccines. Right now, all we have is press releases, and we have some very preliminary studies from the phase 1 and phase 2 trials. But when the data is submitted to FDA, we should also have that scientific information that's put out for those of us in the medical and scientific and public health world to actually look at the data, to dig into the details of these trials, and then be able to give good advice to patients, to our families, and to our communities about getting vaccines. But I'm very optimistic.
Very good. I'm curious about this, too, because there's a genetic factor to this particular vaccine, or what they're looking at here, as I understand. Now, if you get, like, the flu vaccine, it's a dead virus. Is that right?
When you get the flu vaccine, you get either parts of the dead flu virus or you get a total dead virus.
Okay.
And this is approaching it. These two vaccines that are closest are slightly different. They take some of that genetic material from the dead virus that codes for what we call the spike, those surface points on the coronavirus. And so we put that into a vaccine that we inject into the muscle, and our muscle cells then rev up our immune system so that we can attack and prevent that virus attacking us.
I'm taking notes for the class, so that way I can pass the test later. I'm just letting you know. We can do that there. Also, too, there are differences in the logistics of these viruses or not viruses, but the vaccines between Pfizer and Moderna. In particular, the Pfizer vaccine has to stay extremely cold.
That's correct. And so you need large commercial freezers to store this vaccine, or dry ice. That's going to pose some logistical challenges, but I can tell you our health department, along with the CDC and hospitals around the state, the Arkansas Immunization Coalition, have all been communicating very actively about building a process where we're able to get vaccine out, get people vaccinated.
Certainly. And Dr. Robert Hopkins with UAMS, What about that? I mean, before the vaccine is available, I mean, the COVID outbreak continues, and we're seeing an increase in cases, not only in Arkansas, but around the country, around the world. I mean, there's a lot of concern there, and we need to continue to take this seriously. And if you would with that, expand on it. And also the hospital situation, there's a concern there, too.
Absolutely. I can understand people are tired of all of this social distancing and isolation and masking, but we are nowhere close to a time where we can stop doing those things. I think a lot of what we're seeing now are the results of people saying, well, it won't be a bad thing to go out and trick-or-treat. It won't be a bad thing to go out to have dinner with friends or have a party or a dinner party. That is not where we need to be. Right now, we need to continue to stay isolated. We need to continue to use our masks, to wash our hands carefully, to stay home when we're sick. If you're sick or if you have contact, you need to get tested. Because the only way we're going to keep this virus under control or get it back under control is to do those things. And we're seeing the results of people not doing that. We're seeing increased hospitalizations. We're seeing intensive care units being full. We're seeing places without ventilators to put people on. The state of Oklahoma had every ventilator and ICU bed full for the whole state earlier this week. We don't want to get there in Arkansas. We've got to stay vigilant and take these precautions, or we're going to be in a similar situation.
Your advice and your wisdom to the people that say that masks don't work.
Masks absolutely do work. And if you wear a mask correctly over your nose and down to your chin, if you wear a mask and you're in a room with somebody else that's got COVID, you've reduced your risk. If you and that other person also have a mask on and wearing them correctly and you're not touching and playing with the mask or putting it up on top of your head or down below your chin, you reduce the risk dramatically. And so masks make a huge difference. But this is one of those situations where we've got to protect ourselves and we've got to protect others. We've got to all work together if we're going to get through this.
It's Dr. Robert Hopkins, UAMS. Good to have you on this morning. Great information. Appreciate you being here.
Happy to do it.